at the end of the day, you look at the spaces, not just in sport, but in life, whether it's, art or business or whatever it may be, the spaces that have grown the most have accepted the most diversity. My name's Liz Knox. I grew up in Stouffville, Ontario. I'm currently an advisor to the PWHPA board, and my full-time job is a firefighter.
Very cool. And we have personal connections because I've known your grandfather since I was a child.
Yeah, funny, like when you sent me the prep questions and talking about, kind of the history of how did I get into hockey, the very first time I had a stick in my hand was at No Frills Hockey Camp up in Sudbury, Ontario, which of course is close to your home. And yeah, as soon as we connected years ago now, we made that connection, which is pretty cool.
How did Liz get into hockey?
So I actually come from a long line of figure skaters. The women in my family are figure skaters. So that's how I started on skates. And yeah, like I said, one summer, I had this, epiphany that I wanted to be a hockey player. And I just started in the driveway and in the basement. And then I was lucky enough that my grandpa had this hockey school up in Sudbury where we would summer. And I did the 2 weeks there and absolutely fell in love with it. Yeah, it was fate at that point. Loved the game. And then once I started playing in Stouffville in my hometown, we had to rotate in as goalies every so often. And that first game being a goalie, it was like, there was just a light bulb moment. And, I loved the position, loved the sport, and was very lucky that my parents could support me in it.
What do you love about hockey?
It's funny, like now that I'm retired and not playing, I realize what I love about the game is what I miss the most. And certainly being part of a team, being in the locker room, having those friendships, going through the highs and lows. I mean, I think I've come to appreciate how much sport really gives you a great space to channel those energies and deal with disappointment and success. It's lessons that you learn along the way that you don't really even know that you're learning. And certainly for me, being away from the sport a little bit more now, I really appreciate kind of that constructive atmosphere to have those, influx of emotions and frustrations, but also the successes that come with that.
How could hockey be better for you and also for the queer community?
How much time do we have?
As much time as you need.
You know what? I think that hockey as a sport has just such a long way to go. There's certainly efforts recently, obviously yourself included, Black Girl Hockey Club, lots of great people trying to change the space of hockey, but we have a long way to go. And I think, coming from the PWHPA, like I'm right there with you. I think it's, we're trying to create a sport that's inclusive to, just being open-minded and accepting people for who they are, how they identify, their gender, their sexual identity, the color of their skin, their ethnicity. And I think at the end of the day, you look at the spaces, not just in sport, but in life, whether it's, art or business or whatever it may be, the spaces that have grown the most have accepted the most diversity. They've
Yes.
created that space for difference. It's where we learn the most about not only each other and each other's life experiences, but where you have a great opportunity to learn about yourself. And I think, luckily for me, growing up playing women's hockey, it was an open space to sexual identity and having the conversation about, being gay. But that is, definitely a unique experience, I think, to the women's side of the game. The men's side has a long way to go. But that's part of, our mission in creating a sustainable long-term league for women, is that will organically, inherently open that space to queer communities.
I agree fully with you on two fronts. You said in a little earlier about the things you learn, the lessons you learn from hockey. And I've always been of the belief that social issues and human rights are things that, why can we learn work ethic and discipline and learning from a boss or a coach and all these lovely characteristics, but we can't also learn how to engage with people who are different than ourselves and learn about different cultures and celebrate them and include them in in our sport. Like that just seems like it would go hand in hand with the other lessons we learn.
Yeah, and I think like the key word that I love that you said there was celebrate. Like in sport, we love the underdog story. We love the team that is made up a bunch of ringers and they're a grinding, hardworking team, and they don't have the talent on paper, but they find a way and they work together and they come out and they win the championship. Like that
Mhm.
is our fairy tale story, right? We love that story. But for some reason, like we don't love that story when it's an individual who's facing, who's openly gay or who is black or who's facing, mental illness. I think only now we're starting to tell those stories, and as you said, celebrate them. Like this is a space that has made it very, very difficult for a lot of people to be comfortably themselves and find success.
Mhm.
Almost in spite of themselves. It
Yeah.
is how you feel in that space. So I'm with you. It's a very funny. We love the story of the underdog. We love the success stories, but we're very, as hockey as a culture, is very apprehensive to also open that door to the real success stories that are happening.
What keeps you in the sport? What keeps you in hockey?
I think it's exactly what we were just talking about, is the hope that we do have a great opportunity here to change it. I know in a lot of conversations with the Players Association, in the early stages, yeah, we wanted the NHL because that's the pro hockey league that we have to look to. That's, in terms of success, that's the most successful hockey league that we have. I think we're reevaluating ourselves now, and we're reevaluating kind of this opportunity that we have ahead of us to, aim a little bit higher, which I think is a really, ambitious and liberating thing for us, because we have the opportunity now to reach some people that otherwise would definitely not fall in love with the game. And they simply wouldn't fall in love with it because it doesn't represent them. It doesn't speak to them. As I said earlier, I think organically, women's hockey, will touch some spaces and some demographics that typically would not fall in love with hockey.
So what gives you hope for queer people in hockey?
Um, I do think that we're moving, the world is changing. I really do believe that. I think
Mhm.
that our mindset is changing, our education is changing, hopefully continue to trend for the good. And if sport and hockey, specifically want to continue to be a successful business, they have to change. We have to change with the demands that society is putting on us. And I'm happy that diversity and inclusion are like key terms are now a trending topic. Is it always as deep as we want it to be? No. But the fact that we're even talking about it is a step ahead of where we were even 5 years ago.
As you and as women's hockey continues to push boundaries and evolve, I think they'll pull men's hockey up behind them.
I mean, I certainly hope that's the story we're telling in 5-10 years. It's really funny because when I was thinking about coming on and speaking with you in this project, which I think is just incredible, that you're amplifying queer voices. It's kind of like self-reflecting, and I was looking back at when I came out, and I'm not somebody that you know is super open with my personal life. Um, Certainly not trying to hide it, but and I was thinking about why I had that like struggle when I was coming out as a young female, and a lot of it honestly was that I was a hockey player. And it's ironic that I was so lucky to be in a space where my teammates, my coaches, the community that I was in was very accepting. But I also didn't want to fall into a stereotype of like, oh well, yeah, obviously you're gay, you play women's hockey, because that's not everybody's story, right? That is my story, but that's not everybody's story. And then I think it's only as of recent where we're talking about the future of league, and what audiences are we reaching, who are we speaking to, who are we representing, that it's kind of become a thing where it's like, oh, well, yeah, you can certainly tell, queer stories, different families and different relationships that have, some of them stemmed out of hockey. And you can also tell, straight stories about, their families, and just a much more accepting environment. And part of that is, queer voices, finding ourselves and being proud and able to speak about our lives, um, not being afraid to be that stereotype, because it's really creating, more space for these kinds of stories.
Liz, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Just wanted to say thank you. I mean, I think that, talking to you just before we got recording here, hearing how busy you are, once again, pulling the weight, pulling the wagon for us. But honestly, an incredible initiative that you've taken on yourself here to amplify queer voices in the hockey world, where, not always celebrated. And I think that's, at the end of the day, Pride Month is about celebrating. It's about celebrating not only how far we've come, and the people that literally laid down their lives for us to be, who we are, but also celebrating, the hope for the future.
Well, thank you so much.